Hello, welcome to WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. This is one of my favorite shows, Going Solo, Goodreads, Author's Corner, Meet the Author. We're going to meet a wonderful author here today, and I'm so excited about it. But first, before we do, I want to share with you, you are listening to newstreamingnetwork.com, home of Going Solo and Going Bold. We want you to enjoy it. We have both TV, podcast and radio on that network. So we want you to check that out. So I am Cece Shatz. I'm the Doyenne of Relationship Building, and I'm also the host here today on the Author's Corner. So we're going to get right to it because we got a lot to cover. We're going to talk about something totally different today, and I think it's going to be quite inspirational. So I am just really, really thrilled to have our guest on. Let's bring her forward. Hello there.
Hi, how are you?
We have our wonderful guest here today, Brownell Landrum. Am I pronouncing it?
Landrum.
Yeah. Landrum. And you have a wonderful book. You're the author of, we're doing the show about the team upstairs helping you navigate life. What is the name of your actual book?
Yeah, well, I've got a bunch of books, and so I'm sure we can touch on those. The one that kind of fits this whole going solo theme and ties into the upstairs and all of that in this crazy year I've been living is called The End, A Love Story to the Universe. And it's free, just so everybody knows. You can go to my website and download it for free. It's a 9,000 word story, so it's not super long. But spoiler alert, I am working on a part 2 of that right now. So that's pretty exciting. So even though it's called The End, let's just see that the team upstairs has other ideas, and I just have to listen to what they say.
Yeah, I love that. So The End of The End, A Love Story to the Universe. And so we can get that free. She's giving it to us as a free gift. You just go to her website. It's right on there, and you can download it and read it for free. I know we've got a lot of individuals that love to read, and so I hope that you'll enjoy that. And then please send her a message and let her know that you've received the book and that you enjoy it and what your thoughts are on it, because that means so much to the authors to know that people are reading, and not only reading, but what they thought of the book. So, don't hesitate reaching out and letting her know. We've got her email right here on the website or on our site here, and it's on our show notes too, so you can easily find it. But I'm going to read that to you so you have it. So grab your pen and paper and write it down. It's BROWNELL at BROWNELL and then another LANDRUM.com. So that's where you want to email her and let her know that you read that wonderful book that she's given to you to be able to read. But let's get on with our topic here today. Number one, before we start on, is there a team upstairs helping you navigate life? I'd like to know a little bit about your life, because I know that you've written many books. And you're a wonderful, published, successful author. But why did you decide to go into this line of work?
Well, my first book was nonfiction. It's actually called 5 Reasons Why Bad Things Happen. So when people say everything happens for a reason, I say, yeah, I wrote the book on it, literally. And then I ventured into writing fiction. I've also written screenplays and songs and a bunch of stuff. So I never thought I'd write fiction until I wrote fiction, and then I loved it. And kind of my motto for my original novels, and it's kind of carried through all of my fiction, is lose yourself in the fiction, find yourself in the truth. Right. So I find that fictional stories can sometimes open up people's minds and make people think about things and entertain new ideas, that they wouldn't if they thought, may not pick up a nonfiction book, for example. And that also led, I have a new podcast called Life is a Trip, and it's reincarnation and metaphysical stories. So if you like stories and you want to just hear them being read by actors and sometimes by the author, then you can check that out too. Because I really believe in the power of stories, and that they can really make a difference in the world. And so that kind of led to this kind of crazy year, that this is the first time I've ever really written anything that's personal, and that's my own story, although it's a fictionalized version of my story. It's kind of a magical realism, if you will, version of it. So that's kind of what kind of guided me. I just launched a novel trilogy last month that's called We Meet Again. That's about an epic reincarnation mystery about a famous couple from history who's reincarnated today to change the world. It's kind of a Da Vinci Code Outlander kind of vibe with the reincarnation theme. So lots of different things that I do. But I know today we're talking about going solo. So I'm sure that's in this upstairs theme that we're going to get into. So
Yeah.
I'll let you kind of guide me to how do you want to go into that.
Yeah, that is so true, because so often, as we're being led, right, and we're wondering, is there really help, coming from, is our life being navigated by those upstairs? And I've always believed that, we have a higher power, we have something that's meant for us in life. There's something planned that we don't quite know what we're supposed to be experiencing. And when we deviate from it, we're being pulled back into another direction and such. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, in fact, I wrote a children's book, and I'll just recite a couple of verses that's kind of exactly along the lines of what you said. It's like and it's kind of in the middle of the story, but we decide on our lessons, the paths we will take, awards we might go for, and mistakes we might make. For life isn't easy and not always fun, but easy is boring, like games always won. So, it is kind of, that was kind of basically a story about how we plan our life. And, we have free will before we're born, as we're kind of figuring out what kind of life we want to live. I look at kind of like a roadmap, kind of like you were just saying, it's kind of laid out, but we can make some decisions. And that's where we have free will when we get here. And so that's when we do we take the right road, or are we going to get knocked on the right? Like sometimes I look at the guides like border collies knocking us back, sometimes they have to hit us really hard to get us back on track.
Yeah.
And so, all of that was kind of part of my belief until this last year, and things have kind of evolved into something much more magical, I guess is a great way to say it.
Yeah. I mean, I've often said, and I know that people hear it on the channel here all the time, I've often said, God will open a door for me, but I think I've got to climb through the window.
Yeah.
I have to make it a whole lot harder for myself. I still get to maybe the same place, but I have to make it harder on myself. So tell us a little bit about, you refer to this about your life and it being a bit magical. So share with us a little bit about what did happen.
Yeah, well, June of last year, so a little over a year ago, I was living in Aspen, Colorado, and all of a sudden my landlord wants to raise the rent 50%. And that's a lot. And so I was like, okay, this is the impetus I need to go do something different. And so I thought, well, I'm writing a book, and, spoiler alert, it's not too much of a spoiler, but the novels that I just mentioned, the We Meet Again trilogy, a lot of it's set in Italy. So I thought, I'll go to Italy.
Nice.
And so I looked at it, and I thought I found an apartment for a year. Like it all felt like it was working out. And kind of like you're telling, like you think you're going in this window, but then another door is supposed to open. And then I found out they weren't even taking applications for visas. So I didn't even have a choice. And so what I could do was I could go there for 3 months on the travel thing. That's kind of how the travel thing works. But I had to leave for 3 months before I could go back for another 3 months. So then I was like, okay, where am I going to go? And I decided to go to Tunisia, which is not, a lot of Americans aren't there. In fact, I think I might have been the only one there, it feels like. And so that kind of led to this whole kind of experience where I went to Florence, Italy for 3 months, had a magical moments, very, very tied to helping me finish the novels, because I've been working on it for years. And as any writers here, as as writers, sometimes it could take years to get to that point. And I'm like, okay, I'm almost here. And then I knew I was going to go to Tunisia and finish the editing. So that was kind of the plan, and then launch them as I did. And so I go to Italy, and that's great. And a lot, again, you probably have a lot of authors, and the authors know, it's great to have something that you can offer your readers that's not what you're selling, but allows them to get to know you better. And so my marketing coach said, you need to write another story. And so I was like, well, I know exactly what I'm writing. Mm-hmm. And what happened was, I did go to Tunisia not knowing anyone. Of course, I didn't know anybody in Italy either, although I did have a few friends pop over. And then all of a sudden I get there on a Thursday, and that next morning, I meet a man. So, here I'm going solo, thinking I'm going to be solo. And all of a sudden this happens. And I don't want to spoil the story, but when my coach said, hey, you need to write a story, I was like, I know what I'm writing. I'm writing about this encounter that was just so profound in so many different ways. And as I'm writing, and again, as writers, we know sometimes the ideas come from somewhere else. And, like Bob Dylan said, the song was already there before I came around. I just got the pencil and wrote it down.
Right.
I'm writing out this story and I think I'm going to write it from the point of view of the upstairs. So I start writing what I think are characters, right? And I call them X, Y, and then I have the Z's. And as I'm writing it, and I'm all of a sudden realizing they're telling me who they are. This is their way of channeling through me, through my writing, telling me who they are and their active enrollment, active involvement in my life. And so it's kind of like, I'll call it the end, a love story to the universe, because it's definitely a love story on so many different levels. And I was always kind of this person thought, oh, I can set this goal. I know where I'm going. I can make these things happen. But just like I said, the border collies seem to want to whack me down a different road. And then I realized this is a year of just like, okay, let go, accept, what do they want me to do? And just listen, and be guided to where I'm living. So I'm currently, I went from Italy to Tunisia, then back to Aspen to get a heart thing done, an ablation, if anybody knows what that is. So it's not a major procedure, but it's an important one. And I was in Aspen for a few months, and then I came to Atlanta for a few months, which is where I am. This is a hotel. And then now I'm going on more travels. So it's all kind of crazy. And I'm like, where do they want me to go? I don't know. Yesterday I was on a call and they were like, well, we think we want you to go to Dubai and do a speaking gig in Dubai. So
wonderful.
So I don't know what's going to happen, but it's super interesting to kind of let go and see what the team wants.
Yeah, I so agree with that, because I do think a lot of us, we often wonder, we have so many individuals that are going through, that have been in long-term marriages and now find themselves, at a different place in their lives thinking, what's going to happen to me now? And so often I do think that maybe we just don't know what exactly is going to happen, even though we plan, we prepare, we think we know what's going to happen. But the reality is, at the end result, we're just kind of going in a direction we don't really necessarily know where we're going. And I agree with that. I think sometimes we just have to say, whatever's supposed to happen to me, I'm just going to kind of accept it and do the best I can and just get through it. And I think those that don't try to fight life, rather than live life, I think they do find themselves in a better place. They feel, a lot more relaxed, and they enjoy it a little bit more, and they start to see things around them more than they ever did before,
Absolutely. Absolutely. We get so entrenched in our lives sometimes, and one of the things about all the traveling that I'm doing is, if you live in a house and you think, well, I need this kind of mattress to sleep well, and I have to have this kind of pillow, and I have to do this, and I have to have things this way. And then when you travel, you get the mattress you get the pillow you get, right? And all of a sudden, all the things that you thought were so crucial to your life, like, I used to have this weird thing, like I can't wear a pair of socks twice. Well, that went out the window when I realized I couldn't do laundry, anytime I wanted. And I couldn't pack, 100 pairs of socks. So you start kind of letting go of these kinds of things. And, it is really important for them. Like I call it the traffic angels. Like if you're here and somebody's here and they have to get you together, it's really hard if you never leave the house. Like they're not going to come knock on your door and try to sell you, fuller brushes if, put dates me, but, they're not going to try to sell, come to you. So you have to give them some flexibility and mobility. And so, like in my case in the story, how do you get an American woman in Colorado to meet a British man in Tunisia? Like that took some logistics. And you got to make it easy for them, right? I mean, you can't just sit at home and think that that's going to be so. And I've had so many friends had a hard time with this concept. And I'm so glad that you like totally get it, is that they're like, set a goal, where you want to go, make sure you know that. I'm like, the point is, I don't know. I know where I don't want to be. I know some of the end goal and, outcomes I want, but I don't know exactly where that's going to be. and they know. So I have to just surrender to wherever they take me. And, right now I'm going back to Tunisia in 10 days. I found this beautiful luxury resort on the Mediterranean. Beautiful view of the Mediterranean, surf from my window. They're $1,000 a month, including 2 meals a day. And I got really healthy. So I'm like, okay, I'll go back there. And yesterday I get a call and they say, well, maybe we want you in Dubai. And I'm like, okay, well, that's not too far away. So it's like, maybe I just gave them the nudge to say, I'll go here, but then maybe they'll take me somewhere else. It's just wild. It's just wild.
Well, you think about it. Okay, just if we're just thinking about it logical for a minute.
Yeah.
Each individual is very different from each person, right? Each person is totally different from the other. Each person has different interests and different desires and maybe different pathways, of where they think their life should be or going or whatever, different interests and things that make them happy, things that make them sad, all those kind of things. We're all very different from each other. We're all alike, but very different. Yeah. And because of that, we all have different paths in life, right? Different ways, different places we're going to go, people we're going to meet, things we're going to do, all of those kind of things. Because of that, why not have the thought process that that our lives are somewhat kind of planned out, because we have a bit of a knowing, right, of what is good for us and what isn't going to work for us. So we have that little bit of a knowing. So when opportunity opens its door to us, I feel personally, my own self, I feel that we're being guided to that opportunity. If we feel good about it, then we should take advantage of it. We should move forward with it because it's something that maybe a path that we're supposed to be on. So we are being a bit navigated. We don't think we are being navigated, but we are being a bit navigated, because have you ever had something happen in your life where you didn't that's why I say climb through the window, right? You had enough. But for me, I've had opportunities, especially in the podcasting arena, in the media arena where I've been doing, I've had things open the door and I go, oh, no, I can't do that. Are you crazy? I'm not. And then it opens the door again for me, that something's there again for me. And it's like, okay, I get it. I'm supposed to walk through this. And so then I started doing that. I started thinking, okay, if you're giving me this opportunity and it makes somewhat sense and it's not illegal and I'm not going to get hurt, I'm going to go ahead and go with it. I'm going to try to put myself out there and go with it. And when I stopped fighting it and I started, stop fighting, saying, oh, that's not logical, this is not the path that I thought I should be on, blah, blah. When I just started going with it, that's when everything started opening up and it became so much easier and fun and those kind of things. So I totally get what you're saying. And I think that we all have that opportunity. And and if you're on the right path and you don't feel like you're deviating, you need to deviate from it, then you're already on the right path. You've been guided, you've gone down the road and you're doing what you need to do. But yeah.
So, and that's so true. And that what happens often with people, and whether it's a relationship like with me and this particular relationship, or just taking, any, like the travels in general, we often find ourselves with friends going, oh, no, red flag, don't do that. This too dangerous. You can't go to this country. You don't know anybody there. You can't do this, or there's a red flag here on this, or there's a red flag here on this. And it's very easy for somebody to tell you not to do something. It's a lot harder for them to encourage you to do it and to take the risk. And, I call it like the naysayers versus the yay sayers, and I've told my friends, it's like, I don't need a friend that's just going to tell me not to do something. I need a friend that's either going to say, I'm here with champagne or tissues, whatever you need, go for it and see, and like with relationships, sometimes it's easy to go, oh, red flag, I'm out. And that doesn't help you learn anything. You were in that situation for a reason. Again, I wrote a book about all the reasons, right? But you're in that situation for a reason. What is that reason? Because until you resolve it, you're just going to find that problem again. And in a different face, in a different situation, you're supposed to learn something. And either it's going to take you forward or it's going to take you, to another level of learning and growth. And so that's what you also have to look at who you have around in your life, because I'm guessing from what you're talking about, you had people celebrating you and people cheering you
Mhm.
on and people saying, you can do this. Don't worry about those obstacles, and you know what, if you fail, what happens? I'm here. I'm your friend. I'll talk to you, you know,
Right.
and that, when you're talking about going solo in general, right? You've got to make sure that you have the right people around you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree with that. We're going to have to take a quick break. When we come back, let's talk a little bit more about this. And I also want to present to you a question. You can think about it during the break. Is that, is there a way for us to speak to those upstairs to try to help us, when we're a bit troubled or when we've questioned things, if we're going down the right path or whatnot. So let's talk about that when we come back. See if you can answer that. I would love to know that question. But before we go, I want to make sure you guys have all of her information. You can reach her at her email, which is Brownell, Brwnell, and again, it's Brwnell, and her last name, Landrum, Landrum.com. Her website, check it out, because that's where you're going to find your free download, and we want to make sure you guys get that. So you go to Brownell, Brownell, and then her last name, Landrum.com. Remember that name because there's many books out there. She's a very well-known author, and you want to make sure you read all of her stories and all of that, because I think it's very, very enjoyable for you. But make sure you go to the website and get The End, A Love Story to the Universe. And I think it's going to be a wonderful story for us to be able to download. And I'm going to do that myself. I should have done it before the show, but I do apologize. We had a bit of a hurricane that kind of deviated us a bit. So maybe that's a way of making us slow down here in Florida. But yeah, so make sure you guys do that and get the download. It's totally free for you. It's The End, A Love Story to the Universe. So we're going to be right back. You guys are listening to WGSN-DB Going Solo Network, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. That's our radio station. And you can find everything on our new streaming network.com, which is home of Going Solo and Going Bold. We are both a TV, podcast, and a radio platform. So this show here today is called Going Solo Goodreads Author's Corner. Meet the author. We have our wonderful author here today, Brownell Landrum. If I'm screwing up her name, I do totally apologize, but I want to make sure you guys got her website. It's Brownell Landrum, and go to Amazon, and on her website, get all of her books and everything, the stories and all that she's written, because I think you'll find it very enjoyable. But we're talking about, is there a team upstairs helping you navigate life? And we've been talking about that first half of the show. If you missed it, you got to go back and listen, because I think it's very enjoyable. But tell us a little bit about, is there a way that we can kind of talk to them upstairs?
Absolutely. It's so funny though. Like a couple of weeks ago, a friend of mine posted on Facebook something about like, "Are you schizophrenic and do you hear voices?" You're like, I think I might have to. So I'm not sure I'm going to turn out on that particular quiz. What I was doing, the way this worked for me, most obviously, is I just started writing, and they started telling me who they were as I'm writing. So I always tell people, like, I have a Facebook group called Life is a Trip, and it's a Facebook group for people to share reincarnation types of stories. And they're like, I don't know if I can remember. I said, just start writing, and even if you think it's fictional, the truth will somehow come through. And so that's what I was doing with this story. I was writing, and the energy would flow through me. And then after that, as I'm navigating this relationship and this kind of experience with this man, I realized when I was doing the things they wanted me to do, I would feel this rush of positive energy. Like they would reward me in a very profound way. And if I wasn't, then either it would be crickets or I'd be like, okay, what am I supposed to do here? And sometimes I would just sit and ask the question and say, okay, where am I supposed to go? And I would get some kind of inspiration, or sometimes maybe I feel like I'm hearing a message of something that I should do. So, and so it's, it's been very powerful in that regard to get there. And, like just a week ago, I was kind of in a funk. Maybe it's 2 weeks ago. I was in a funk. I felt like, you're talking about you're in the doors and then they have the window open. And I was like, okay, I feel like I'm in a room and all the doors are shut. And like, they're all locked from the outside. I can't get through them. Like, what am I going to do? And so I'm asking them, like, if I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing, show me where I'm supposed to go. Show me what I'm supposed to do. Because the trip to Tunisia was having some obstacles that were popping up in terms of, the airline flight. All of a sudden, it looked like too close a connection in Charles de Gaulle, and it was going to stress me out. And then, all these different little things were popping up. And I'm like, if y'all don't want me to do this, or you don't want me to pursue this, then give me something better. And what happened was, so I went through that in about a day or so. And then all of a sudden, I get this idea, and it's like all these little ideas I had from one of them I'd had years ago. And then all these pieces, it's like a puzzle, and all the pieces are floating around in the air, and all of a sudden they all came together. And so I really feel like they were coming through saying, this is what we want you to do. And I'll tell you, you're the first that gets to hear this, is the part 2 for this story. The end goes into, I call it Christmas's Forgiveness. And so it's got kind of a holiday theme. And I had been thinking about that title for a long time, because if you think about it, it's such a great double entendre, right? It's like forgiveness, but it's also forgiveness. Mm-hmm. And so I wrote the lyrics to a song that day or the next day. It flowed right through me. And, the verse, the chorus is Christmas is forgiveness, Christmas is for friends, and it's up to each of us how our story ends. And so it's a really, really lovely story, a song. And then I realized the part 2 of this other story, the end story, is going to have that same kind of theme, right? Because if you're looking at kind of deconstructing relationship or whatever, forgiveness is such a key theme. So that's how they started talking to me. And then once they did, the ideas start flowing again. Mm-hmm. And I also realized that one of the messages they were giving me is, I've been in most of this year editing and marketing, and I wasn't being creative. And my energy comes from the creativity and the writing. So to be able to get back into writing is just like so much fun.
Yeah, I can imagine that. Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying is, and I will share a couple things. One is that when I'm dating somebody, right, and I really like them, and I'm wondering about whether I should be with them or not, I will do the same thing. Like you said, I will ask them, and it's terrible because sometimes I feel bad about this, but when I'm quiet and I'm by myself, I will say, if they're not for me, move them away from me. That's all I ask, is if they're not for me, because I don't want to get, hurt again, right? So I'll say, move them away from me. And I will tell you, like the next day, something happens and they're out, they're gone again, and when I have done this where I've said that, and someone that I am dating has stayed. And so
it works both ways, right? It's what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens as time goes on. So, but I will say that, and I'm mean it seriously. It'll be like the next day something will happen, and they will be out of my life completely. They'll move on. They'll do something. They'll break up, or something will happen. It's like the weirdest thing. And journaling, I will share with the audience that I do listen to Matt Frazier. I'm sure you know Matt Frazier. He talks about journaling and stuff. So I have a book that I journal in. And one thing that he did say, which is very similar to what you're doing, what you're saying, is that you write in there your spirit guides. You write in there what, about being grateful and all of that, but also about like what it is that you are feeling or what you want, or, something like, because they don't they need to sometimes maybe a little bit more direction or what it is that you're going through, or I don't know, whatever. And so I write it in there, and I find that it now leads me into the path that I need. Like if I'm having something that's bothering me, that's troubling me, whether it be business or personal related, I write it in there. And then next thing I know, that problem seems to be solved.
Yeah, exactly. Or sometimes I'll write like, what do you guys want, or where, and this is where I am, and tell me what, and I will feel like, it's not really officially automatic writing, but it is like, this is where I'm stuck. Help me here. And it's very interesting how just the flow of the energy. I mean, I really think it all comes down to energy, right? And it's the flow of the energy, whether it's in your pen, in your journal, or me on the computer keyboard, or even a voice recorder. Sometimes I'll just like ramble on voice recorder to myself. Like I'm having to just have this conversation to see if I can get closer. And sometimes the message is, there's something more for you to learn here. This is not the time to walk away. There's more to learn. And sometimes you might go, okay, can you speed up the learning? Can, if this isn't, if this isn't particularly fun. But that's, the way to open up. You got to open up that portal to that energy, whatever way feels good for you.
Yeah. And I used to do that too with when I first got divorced, I had a voice recorder thing that I bought. And when I first started into the business, and I would do that too. When I was in the car, I would record things, and then I would listen back to it and think, boy, you're a little loony, but I would, talk out loud of my thoughts, or whatever. Yeah. So I would do things like that, but it's interesting. But yeah, I mean, there's so often, when I look back on my life, I look at areas in my life and I think to myself, why did I do what I did, but it got me to where I am, or got me to, like I have beautiful children, it's gotten me to that place, those kind of things. And like when you're talking about meeting, the British guy, I met, my ex-husband, and he was British. He lived in the UK. I lived here. How do we get together? And we did get together, and we did have a wonderful relationship for many, many years. We were married for 18 years. So it wasn't all bad. It was good, and then, you wonder why it turned the way it did. And then I just tend to wonder, maybe we're just supposed to take different paths. We were supposed to be together and learn something during that time. And we have a beautiful son from that marriage. And so maybe there's something else and I would have never been doing this right here, what I'm doing now.
There you go. That's the biggie, right?
And I'm sure there's things he's doing that he probably would have never done had he stayed with me. So, yeah. So you don't know why, rhyme or reason, why we have these twists and turns in our lives. But so are we really being navigated from upstairs? Yeah.
Well, right. There is kind of a bunch of factors, right? Again, there's like what you planned in advance. So that's kind of your destiny, if you will, once you get here, which is very open-ended. You can decide if you've got a roadmap, you can go right or left or zoom through an intersection. And then when you get here, you've got that free will, as I said, and then you've got help and you've got some guides. And I do think we get tripped up and go, well, this is what I want, and I'm going to push. And like, in fact, I have a discussion going on in my Facebook group right now about The Secret, right? That whole video and all of that. And it's like, yeah, there's a lot more to things than just law of attraction and wishing something into reality, because a lot of the things that were our most powerful learning experiences wouldn't have been on our wish list, but that's what we needed, right?
Yeah.
So, it's an important life lesson. And it's just been an incredible year. I still don't know where I'm going. I still don't know what's going to happen. I'm still like this, seed floating in the wind, waiting for the right place to land. And I laugh and say, plant a lot of seeds and put a lot of fertilizer out there and maybe something will grow. I don't know.
But how exciting is that? I mean, that's what I tell them, as they're moving through, relationship law and starting to design their new life. How exciting is that you're at the wheel and you can design your life the way you want it to be or way you feel it should be, right? And you're living a life that you feel you should live. And that's a beautiful thing. That's a wonderful thing. And, and are we benefiting? Heck yeah, because you're writing these great stories and you're sharing that because you've got this beautiful gift of being a writer, that you're sharing it with all of us. And so, hallelujah. Maybe it's not just about you. Maybe it's about you sharing all of what you do and what you've experienced with the world. So,
Honestly, it totally is. I mean, the
yeah.
message I got from them, I mean, again, the spoiler, of course, the title is called The End. And then another spoiler is I'm writing a part 2. So that'll confuse you. And I'll do that on purpose. I'll add a little teaser to confuse because I'm confused, right? And so I'm like, I'm not exactly sure what's happening. And I know as I'm writing, I'm manifesting, and also, like it's just super confusing. And it's just interesting to just sit there and go, what is going to flow? What is supposed to flow? And just being kind of ready for those outcomes. And also I was told very clearly by them, this is one of the times it's like I'm on the phone with them, it's almost that clear that when it ended, it had to end, because it had to give me these last few months to get the books launched. And FYI, you can buy the first book in the trilogy for 99 cents. So there's another offer. But that was important. And the message I keep getting, and I launched the podcast. I mean, like all these things are been happening that, like you said, you wouldn't have done probably if you'd stayed married. I wouldn't have done in this interim time. Does that mean there's something more in the future with whoever, I don't know. They have to tell me, but I know in the part 2, what they're telling me to write is so interesting, like really, really interesting. And that theme, of course, is forgiveness, is woven into it. And yeah, so, and gosh, I mean, if you can teach the world a new way to look at forgiveness, that's pretty powerful right there.
Very powerful. Very, very powerful.
I've had some fans of my novels, my first series of novels, and it's like this changed their life. This saved their life. I mean, like, we don't know as writers what kind of audience we're going to get, but if we can, I would rather affect a smaller amount of people in a very deep way than masses, and they read it and it's done and they never think about it again.
Yeah. No, I get that. I think you're definitely changing lives, and like I said, it's, even though we want to think that what we experience is about us, but I think there's a whole bigger picture to it, right? And we're kind of like the spoke, or we're the centerpiece, and all the spokes are going out. You know what I mean? We're kind of, I don't know. It makes
That's a great analogy. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think that's kind of what it is, and how beautiful that you get to experience it, but then not only experience it, but share it with all of us so that we could even, it touches our lives and we better understand it ourselves, because there's many, many things that have happened in my life that I sit and think, why is this? Why am I going through this? And then I have to back it up and say, okay, what am I supposed to learn from this? Because I don't necessarily want to experience this again. So can you just spell it out so I don't do it again?
Yeah, I call that, in fact, I might write a book with this title. I call it reverse optimism. Right? So you can look back and go, okay, that was hell, but man, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. But man, so like you kind of have this optimism today, which is kind of, is in reverse. And you go, yeah, I needed that. I needed that kick in the whatever to get there. So yeah, absolutely.
I totally get that. My father used to always say, oh, you're so naive, and I get to the point why he said that, and the lessons I've had to learn to not be quite as naive, but still keep that innocence. You still want to keep somewhat of the innocence and the joy of the goodness that will come. You don't want to be bitter about anything. But yeah, but I kind of get that. And so I think a lot of the lessons that I've had to learn was to to not be quite so gullible or so so naive about things.
Well, but you never know. It's like I met, I'm sure you know the book When Bad Things Happen to Good People, right? And it was written by Rabbi Harold Kushner. And I met him right after I wrote my book. And he read my book. He's such a gracious man. And he read my book. And he came back and he said, he doesn't believe things happen for a reason, period. To him, it's all random. And that led me to do more research that says the people who believe things happen for a reason are a lot happier than those who don't. Right. So that's, I think, maybe what they're looking in you and saying, you're happier because you can, even in the bad times, you can know that there is something. If you keep looking, you're going to find the reason. The reason's going to get you to change something. It's going to put you down a new path. And even if it's awful, even awful, 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 and there are the worst of awfuls, if you have a viewpoint of, I'll get through this and there'll be something I can learn, and maybe I can turn it into a book, or maybe I can turn it into something that'll help other people. It lightens that, that weight of that problem.
Yeah. Yeah, you're probably right with that. Well, you are a delight. So tell us where we can find all of your books. Are they all on Amazon or?
Yeah, almost all of them. My children's books aren't, because I'm still trying to figure out what to do there. And ebooks just aren't quite as good. So that's kind of on hold, unless somebody's a publisher and wants to publish them, and then I'm totally good with that. Because I want them to be right, and they're not quite they're written right, but they're not out there. But yeah, you can find me on Amazon. And like I said, my website's got all my all the books. I've got a trilogy called DUET Stories. It's also a love story. That's more of a love story with reincarnation theme. And I'm in the process of, I'm writing part 2 of The End. And then I am going to also finish 2 other books that I've written the screenplays for, and I'm going to write those. So when I go my travels now, I'll finish those 2 books and see what the world thinks of those as well. So there's just a lot to, a lot to get out there. And I'd love, like you said, I'd love for people to reach out to me for The End. If they get in that, we have a Facebook group that's for people to discuss the spoilers in that. I've actually had like 2 or 3 people tell me that book, that 9,000 words, it's only 9,000 words, could be a college course. And I'm like, what?
Yeah, definitely.
Isn't that wild? Yeah.
Again, everybody, you just go to her website and you can get it. The End, a love story to the universe. And so definitely get that, download it. And her website again is BrownellLandrum.com. So make sure you definitely do that. It's all our show notes. You just go to show notes and click it. You can go right in straight. Should be able to go right straight in through it. Well, you are a delight. I hope we have you on again. Are you still going to be doing your podcast? Is that something you're going to continue?
Yeah. Yeah, well, my podcast isn't an interview one, right? It's just stories. So if anybody's a writer and you have a metaphysical type of story that's like 1,000 to 3,000 words, first feel free to reach out to me, because I would just want to share stories from writers around the world. And I even had a Hollywood producer reach out to me last week. So you never know what could turn into that. I'd love to see some of the other writers get their excitement. And we're on IMDb, so they get IMDb credit. So other than that, yes, I'm going to answer your question. Yes, all that's going to stay alive. And, interviews like this, I can do from anywhere. It might be 2 a.m. where I am, but I'm happy to do it.
Yeah. Wonderful. Now, is it video or is it just audio?
It's just audio for the podcast. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I mean, it's on YouTube, but we don't have video,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
You can just listen there.
Wonderful. That is great. So, well, I want to thank you so much for being on the show. You are a delight. I'm so thrilled to have you. And, we both have the kind of same mindset, and I just love you for that. I just think you're great. And so if you ever want to come back on again, I hope you'll let us know, because you've written so many things. We'd love to be able to share more and more things that you do. So don't hesitate coming back on for us. We'd love to have you.
Well, maybe we'll talk about forgiveness next time.
Yes, I would love that, because I tell you what, everybody struggles with that, especially coming out of relationship loss. It's a hard thing to do. And it's a thing you need to do for yourself. So it's a wonderful thing. So thank you so much. We truly appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate you too.
All right, everyone. You're listening to WGSN-DB Going Solo Network, new streaming network.com, home of Going Solo and Going Bold. This is the Going Solo Authors Corner. We hope that you enjoyed our author today, Brownell Landrum, if I'm saying it right.
Brownell Landrum. Yeah. Just think of an L that's brown. It's a Brownell. That's the easy way to remember.
Brownell Landrum. So we'll make sure you guys get that. Go to her website, please, and look at all of the things that she's written. She's a wonderful author and a delightful person. So we just love having her. So I hope we'll see you again. And thank you so much again for being on the show. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Enjoy it.
I'm Cece Shatz, the Doyenne of Relationship Building, and I hope that you will come back and listen to us again. We really do appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. Bye bye for now.